We'll begin recording. So another official welcome to everybody. We are kicking off Measuring the Value of Social Media for Your Nonprofit. My name is Dr. Amy Jalman. I'm a certified social media strategist and the Chief Learning Officer for the National Institute for Social Media. And with me is Joe Miller, President of the Grant Professionals Association, also a certified social media strategist and a certified NISM educator. She's the owner and managing director of Smarty Grants, which is a professional development and training organization for grant professionals. So we are so fortunate to have her with us today, and we are just so excited to get started. So Joe, I'm going to go ahead. Do you want to throw yourself on mute? I think we are going to, unless you want to share anything with everybody right off the bat.
I'm good to go. Thank you, Amy.
You bet. So we're going to mute everybody, and Joe is going to kind of keep an eye on the chat as questions come in throughout the presentation. She'll also kind of keep an eye on some of the technical stuff, the audio, things along those lines. So feel free to go ahead and send a chat into the chat box if you have any questions you'd like us to address at any time. And we are also going to, as I previously mentioned, we're just going to keep everybody on mute just to keep the lines clean. So welcome, and let's go ahead and jump in. This, as I mentioned, is our first NISM for Good webinar. And as you had potentially previously seen, if you were here a little bit earlier, we have a class coming up on May 7th, which is actually a social media strategist certification prep class, but it's going to be specifically for people who work in the nonprofit realm. And as Joe and I were planning this, Joe has been a longtime supporter of NISM, a really impressive member of our team. We have been talking for so long about giving back to the nonprofit community, and so we are just so thrilled to be doing not only this free webinar for nonprofit professionals today, but also offering that certification prep class at a huge discount taught by Joe herself. And we'll tell you more about that later on, but just wanted to give you a little bit of a history about what brings us here today. But without further ado, let's get to the message and the info about why we're really here. So as you probably read in the description, we are focused on helping nonprofit professionals influence decision makers and really have an impact when they know what needs to happen to move their organization forward through social media. It can be incredibly challenging. Even outside of the nonprofit realm, a lot of our strategists run into the same problems where we connect with leaders and we try to express to them how important it is that we have a strong digital presence, that we invest time, money, and really research into managing as our digital storefront as much as we manage any other aspect of our professional presence. But when we talk to these professionals, even though social media, by and large, is becoming more and more widely accepted as a critical business practice, one of the things that people are still struggling with is getting those decision makers to buy in and really take them seriously. So the small piece that I want to talk to you all about ties a little bit more to my background, both as an organization development professional and as a certified social media strategist, because I want to talk to you about talking to those decision makers and using it's maybe even something you've heard before, but using this approach of head, heart, and hands. And it's tackling these kind of three sets of questions to formulate a really solid argument as you communicate with these key decision makers. Now, going into these conversations, I want you to think of a couple of things, because what you know is a really delicate balance. First off, don't undervalue what you already know about the people that you're talking to. You probably know anytime you need to bring a new initiative into your organization, you're probably familiar with the approval process. You probably know who has to sign off on what. You probably know how long different processes take. You probably have all kinds of insight from past experiences. This is really powerful. You should leverage this knowledge that you've got. You've probably also heard concerns. You probably maybe even know there's a little curmudgeon out there who is going to say that social media isn't worth the investment. Or that third bullet there. I mean, how many people in the nonprofit realm can relate to there being staffing issues or concerns that as soon as somebody says, hey, we should add something or do something differently, that's the first thing that comes up. We just don't have the bandwidth. Now, there is a lot of power in knowing all of that, because every proposal is going to be a little bit different, and that knowledge that you've already got can just strengthen your own argument. So I encourage you, and Joe's going to give you a ton of details and kind of specific examples, but I encourage you to apply to your own specific environment what is most meaningful to you. So the other half of that delicate balance, though, is being careful not to assume buy-in or resistance. So a lot of times I'll hear people use language that kind of undercuts the value of what they're saying. So they'll say something like, I know it's not in our budget, but I'd really like to talk to you about upping our digital presence and really investing in social media. Why start out with that negative language? Why not go in confidently? But there's a kind of flip side to that as well. I've also seen people feel very confident that they were ready to move ahead, only to find out that their backing wasn't as strong as they thought. So don't mistake somebody in the organization being interested in what you're offering as them having enough information to get you across the finish line. And do have measurable stuff ready to share. Don't just talk about how everybody's doing it. Get some data, get some examples, take a look at your competitors, share good real stuff, and ask good questions on behalf of the people you're talking to, and save yourself that future headache. If you know that eventually, once they've had time to think about something, they're going to come back and ask you about X, be prepared and give them the information up front. So it really is a delicate balance of not undervaluing and undercutting what you already know, but also not assuming too much. So with that, let's just take a quick look at what head, heart, and hands looks like in the social media realm. So from a head standpoint, what do they need to know about social media in general and about your request specifically? Everyone is going to come at this from a little different angle. You might be a really small nonprofit, and you might be thinking, hey, we've got one person who has 10% of their time to devote to this. This is going to be a very different ask than a marketing team of 10 people at a larger nonprofit that is looking at getting a team social media strategy pulled together and aligned. What does that look like for you? What are the details? The second one, this heart concept, how do you get them to care about social media? How does social media tie to your goals? How is it going to have that impact? And believe it or not, the hands aspect, what you actually need them to do, is one of the ones that people miss out on explaining most often. So essentially what that means is literally stating, so I need you to sign off on this document. So I need you to approve XYZ. So what do they need to know about social media in general? First bullet's an important one. If they don't understand the basics of social media, start there. Avoid talking down to people, but don't think that going in and saying really impressive things that no one understands is going to get you anywhere, because all it's going to do is leave people confused and potentially more suspicious. And if they don't understand the business of social media, bridge that gap for them. So you might have an inkling already that someone thinks that social media is for their kids, or social media is how they keep up with their old college friends because all they can think of is Facebook. So that's actually a great place to start, because they have the concept of social media in their memory bank, right? They've got information that they're pulling from, but they may not understand the business of social media. So we want to talk to them specifically about what that looks like. And then again, what do they need to know about your request? What are you actually asking for? Do you have a clear and simple goal for your strategy? And does your organization have a history, or someone like you have a history on social media that can help kind of bring your point to life? So this head concept is all about helping them understand the material and the content. The heart idea is how you get them to care about social media. in most cases, in that nonprofit world, they're really passionate about the work already. So how can you kind of tap into that and tie in the mission of your organization with the possibilities that come as a result of having a stronger digital presence? What does that look like? What does that, what can that potentially mean for you and the people that you serve? And then how do you convince them to take money from other areas that support your mission so that you can actually afford and manage that social media and digital presence? That's a tough one, right? Because it isn't that we've all got so much money that we don't know what to do with. It usually comes from somewhere else. And then finally, keep their action steps simple. What do you need from them? List anything that's measurable and be sure to tell them why it's critical. Never assume that they understand why you need it. And then also, what do you need them to do? Clearly explain, to the extent that you understand it, what they need to do to help you be successful. I also always mention a desired timeline. So particularly if you know that you have a very busy leadership team and sometimes things kind of get away from them, putting a deliver by date on something can really help get a request filled. So with that, what everybody has been waiting for, I'm going to pass the presentation over to Joe Miller, who is going to share with you some more of the details around what this looks like, what social media looks like in the nonprofit world. As I mentioned, here's the info, and we will be sending this out in the follow-up email with the recording about the class that Joe is going to be teaching for us starting May 7th. There are weekly webinars where you get one-on-one time, an hour a week with Joe. And it's just such a great opportunity. We're so excited to launch. So more on that later. Do keep chatting in questions. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Joe.
Thank you, Amy, very much. I'm going to pull this over to my screen. And I only want one screen. There we go. How's that look? Is that coming over for you?
Looks perfect.
Awesome. Very good. Well, thank you. All right, so we want to talk about the demonstrated value of social media. Amy, thank you so much for that background on the head, hearts, hand. I always love hearing about that. I always have notes. I was even taking notes while you were speaking. I was like, oh, there's other stuff I wanted to say and other things I want to incorporate in my own social media. So thank you for that. Again, all of you have heard about how we influence decision makers, the importance of fully engaging that head, heart, and hands to influence the decision makers. You can also think of it as the thinking, feeling, doing. We're going to talk about the ways that we can get leadership to invest in your nonprofit social media strategy. Now, Amy touched on a few of these things, and I want to know, if you guys want to enter into the chat box, how many of you feel like you've received enough training? Or do you feel like you need to receive more training? Or does your communications team or others that are handling communications in general, do they get enough training? Do they know what they're doing with social media? Training is critical to your success, and knowing that you have staff that has expertise or at least access to training is really important. That's one reason why I support the National Institute for Social Media, because of their training, because of what they do for the profession. Also, how many of you feel like, if you're involved in social media communications, how many of you feel like your workload is overwhelming? Or you just feel like it's heavy, keeps you moving, or is it just right? Do you have the communications team and staffing, whether that's consultants or on staff, folks handling your communications and social media? Now, we find that both of these areas, training and staffing, is often a challenge for nonprofits. Now, the culture of communications for a nonprofit is extremely important, and it's critical to the success of the communications team, of your social media, and your communications in general. So do you feel like, I feel like my screen is not moving forward. There we go. Do you feel like social media is part of your organization's strategic plan and overall communications plan? Or do you feel like it's kind of a second thought? Now, we want you to know there's a difference between traditional marketing and communications and nonprofit marketing and communications. there's a slight difference. And ultimately, that difference is just in the goal. It's not in the tactics or in the tools. And we're going to talk more about the tactics and tools now. So why don't leaders in nonprofits invest in social media and in their digital communications? Amy talked about engaging the head, heart, hands. And you would think by now that you wouldn't need to convince an executive director or board member that social media is useful and necessary for their nonprofit marketing and engagement. And social media is a vital part of your marketing and communications mix. But how many of you feel like, again, leadership sees social media as an afterthought with no connection or direction to your strategic plans or to your program objectives? And I bet many of you have heard that our donors or funders or clients, insert your audience, don't use social media. Or a nonprofit board just can't find those resources like Amy talked about within the budget for social media. Now, even though they know you have an audience on social media, they still don't have the resources for you to connect with them. And I've seen too many nonprofits suggest, when we say we don't have enough resources to invest in social media, that they get an intern to manage their social media. And I bet a lot of you have heard that as well. You're not alone. We're going to talk about that and how you work with leadership to understand what that can do for your social media and your organization. And how many of you have seen your nonprofit competitors on social media? They're growing their communities, they're engaging with funders and donors, but still you have executives that don't see or want to hear about how other organizations are using and investing in social media. So that's probably why you're here. One of the main reasons leadership doesn't invest in social media is that they don't see social media as a tool, but they also see social media as a huge risk. And it is a risk. Having a social media program, being on social media is a risk. So without expertise or a strategy or policies or tools for social media, it can be a risk for any nonprofit. It's a risk for your reputation and for your bottom line. And what leadership really wants to know is this: is the risk worth the payoff? Well, you probably wouldn't be here today if you didn't believe that nonprofits can maximize their risks. How about reduce their risks and maximize their return on investments when leadership invests in the right elements for social media? Nonprofit leaders may feel like we're trying to replace their tools, their tried and true investments in donor lists and campaigns, email databases with social media. Now, using social media and using social networks isn't new. Networks have been around since, we've had civilization. But social media is a term that we commonly use for digital networks, and I want to be really, really clear that one type of network does not completely replace another. When nonprofits first launched their websites, there was considerable risk when experts in staffing and strategies and policies were integrated in that implementation program with websites. It's the same true today. It's just a given that we have websites. When nonprofits began using communication tools like email, when we started using email, that didn't stop us from using mail or the phones. Email is another tool that was added into our toolbox. And over time, email has changed, and our phones have changed, and our communication has changed as a result of that. So our nonprofit marketing and communication strategies are constantly changing and will continue to change. And we want to make sure that we are keeping up with those changes and that we're using these tools that are available to our nonprofits. So to get leadership investment, our job is to keep up with those changes, reduce the risk to the organization, support the strategic plan, and advance the organization's mission. So why would an executive director invest resources and value their nonprofit's digital communications and growth and social media engagement? Well, let's start with their responsibilities. What is your executive director and leadership responsible for? To lead the organization and manage the organization. Now, leaders, people that are natural leaders, they're visionary. They are communicators that give scope to an organization's challenges and strategy. They build anticipation. They believe in the team dreams. They love the organization's vision, are driven by that. They love an innovative program that can cause change. They support volunteers. They know that they make a difference. And they really see that a community can achieve more together. They are inspired and they inspire others. People are more managers that really come into that executive position because of their manager skills. They're goal-oriented. They work the mission. They're organized. They love control. They want to monitor things. They want to manage the assets and resources and people to stay on track to meet the goals that the board has set for them. They seek to limit risk and achieve steady growth. So most executive directors are going to be stronger in one style or the other, but they need both to have a successful organization. So to support their leading and their managing, the executive director of a nonprofit also needs to have strengths in fundraising and communications. So
hey Joe, it's Amy.
Sure.
Hi, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. So,
I see that we're not moving forward.
I know. So here's what I'm thinking. I apologize for the interruption for our listeners, but for some reason, as Joe is advancing her slides, I don't think they're coming through on our side. So it seems to be a little hiccup. So I think what we're going to do, Joe, if it's okay with you.
I think I just found the problem.
Oh, well then.
I got it.
Then I'm just going to go back on mute, and I'm going to say it's nice to talk to everybody again. Enjoy the rest of the
Good to hear from you, Amy. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Joe.
So, sorry about that. Thank you. I'm so glad I didn't keep going forward. I figured out what the problem is. We'll keep going here. So I was talking about how executive directors are usually stronger in one style or the other, whether they're managers, natural managers, or natural leaders, and that they need to have a well-rounded ability as a communicator to promote the organization. They're going to be at events. They're going to be featured in promotional materials and make some decisions about promotional materials, and often on social media outlets too. So keep in mind, as you're thinking about how can we gain their support, how can we add value to the organization, how can we help them decide that social media is valuable to the organization, ask yourself, how can you help that executive director lead and manage the organization? What is in it for them? Again, Amy talked about the head, heart, hands. So in a little bit, for instance, when I show you some of the tools that list funders and their staff, you'll see that they do include links to the funders' staff LinkedIn accounts. And would it be helpful for you to give your executive director a list of potential connections and names, contact information on LinkedIn or the social media accounts? Probably. Well, let me back up for a second. I am making an assumption here, aren't I? So I do have an assignment for you to do as soon as you get off of here, which is I want you to be sure that you go out and you look at all the folks in your organization, that you check to see if your organization, your executive director, maybe board members and other staff are actually on LinkedIn. It is still all too common to find someone in an executive level position in a nonprofit who has not personally embraced online marketing platforms to advance their organization's cause. And making sure that your executive director and leaders within your organization are on LinkedIn, it's going to advance their careers too, so they make better connections. But an absence on social media could mean that they are missing vital connections that impact their leadership and their management of the organization. It's a great place to start. And if they need help with their LinkedIn account or to make more connections, you can help with that. Again, engaging them, letting them see the value for themselves and experience that. So according to a 2017 Nonprofit Communications Trends Survey, only 27% of communications staff felt that they had an exceptional relationship with their executive director. That level of relationship and the rapport are indicators of the communication effectiveness within the organization and actually outside of the organization. So Amy and I want to help you improve your relationship with leadership and build the kind of rapport that is mutually beneficial for the communications team, whether you're a team of 1 or 20, and with leadership while advancing the organization's brand, reputation, and mission. So in other words, sometimes it's helpful to provide the organization's executive level staff with a little help and some training targeted to their careers, their professional connections, organization goals, and their values. If they are the public face of the organization, then it is very likely that people want to get to know them better. And they'll be able to make those meaningful connections with people with a strong professional social media presence. They don't have to be on all platforms. Start with LinkedIn. So, what does the data tell us about nonprofits and how they're engaging on social media and what that's doing for their organizations? Well, an overwhelming majority of nonprofits list Facebook as their primary social network. 80% use Facebook as their primary social network. Now, the responsibility typically falls on only one employee. That may be you here today. We feel your pain. We understand. That's why we're here today. We're going to talk about that investment. So it may just fall on you, one person, and maybe you're spending 1 or 2 hours a week. That's the average right now. Not much more. So 38% are spending 1 or 2 hours a week. It was even less for other organizations. The goals for nonprofits on social media are really varied and diverse, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, and we'll get into that soon. But here's the one thing I find incredibly fascinating. Less than half of the nonprofits are actually measuring their results. And if we don't have measurement, how can we value it? So we'll be talking about measurement too. Tracking social media accounts of donors and donor databases, or with grant makers and their grantees within grants databases, is a rare practice, and in my opinion, a huge missed opportunity. And most nonprofits don't have a documented social media strategy or policy. All of these lead back to the challenges that we talked about. So leadership is much more likely to invest in effective efforts. If you're not measuring your results, how do you know if you're effective? If you don't have goals, how do you measure results? According to the Nonprofit Communications Trends Report, the most effective nonprofit communicators were more skilled at the big picture thinking, editorial planning, and repurposing content. And we'll talk about that too. So, goals. What are the most common goals for nonprofits when they're using social media? They're using it for special event fundraising, for managing their brand or reputation. They may use it for recruiting program participants. We're seeing more and more funders asking for that social media account, looking to see what you're doing on social media, and looking to see if you have a program, maybe you have a Facebook community that relates to a grant project or program. So using social media to recruit program participants, engaging community, that's a goal. Recruiting volunteers. A lot of nonprofits use social media to engage and recruit volunteers, support fundraising events, raise awareness about a particular topic, and position the organization as a thought leader while advocating for positions or policies as well. So you can use social media for a variety of ways. The point here is you don't have to use social media for all of these goals. Pick 1 or 2 to start with. So what does a nonprofit want to accomplish? That's what we're talking about when we're talking about your nonprofit social media strategic planning. How will social media support the organization's strategic plan, your project goals, or your program outcomes? If we're not looking at that and making that connection, social media is not going to be valued. So look at ways that social media can help you disseminate information about your cause or your organization. Look for ways that social media can build community and engage with different stakeholders. And look for ways that social media can help you mobilize actions like donate or sign this petition, or get more volunteers engaged in an event. So one of the challenges is that we don't have enough staff or we don't have enough time to get traction on social media. So one way to help you do that is to really streamline your social media campaigns. There's a lot of best practices out there. There's great ways to create a compelling calendar. In fact, we have some tools and resources for you on creating compelling content calendars on the National Institute's website. We can put some links up in a little bit. But the key here is to make sure that you're mapping your big picture timeline for the year. So use a calendar that shows what messages will be published on which channel or which platform. Create a clear system and have that in place about ways that you might change the editorial calendar so that you can be responsive and nimble. So if, for instance, a big issue comes up and you need to put something into a regular newsletter, how would you do that? How would you get last minute information into a newsletter? Who's on the team that's going to help you with that? Create a clear strategy for repurposing content and cross-platform posting or recycling. So if you have a blog post, does it go out onto your Facebook group? Does it go out on your Twitter and Instagram? How are you integrating those platforms and making sure that you're using the different styles of those platforms to reach different audiences? Now again, your leadership wants to reduce the risk. This is probably the biggest issue besides money, is risk. So reduce the risk to the organization. That's, again, one of our greatest challenges. So some of the fears that leadership have: trolls, that we may be misrepresented on social media, that there are negative comments. We want to make sure that we have solutions in place before that even happens. So create your plan, have a consistent voice, look at ways that you can be transparent and honest. Create your nonprofit social media policy and guidelines and training. Remind staff that they represent the organization even in off hours. So make it a policy that if anyone posts anything related to the organization, it should have prior approval first. Again, have those clear guidelines. Make sure, again, that you can do that rapid response. It matters, but it's a challenge for nonprofits. If you're going to protect the organization and reduce the risk and have that approval process, that can get in the way of being nimble and agile and being responsive. So all too often, those who manage social media or manage the newsletters and communities or email aren't able to respond rapidly because we may not, again, have the authority to change the communication schedule. So talk about that ahead of time. Look at that rapid response, develop a rapid response strategy that addresses these challenges. Any planning that you can do ahead of time addresses the challenges that we have in investing social media and protects the organization while advancing your mission. So I'm going to stop for just a second and see if we have any questions. Amy?
Oh, that was really testing me to see if I was paying attention there, Joe. I think the questions we have got coming up, we can save to the end because looking ahead, I peeked and I think we're going to address some of them that have come in. So I think we're okay to keep going on, but I will take this moment to point out we've got about 25 minutes left in the webinar, and just a heads up for everybody else, Joe and I are going to stay on the line after our call technically ends, so you are welcome to stay with us, but we will also end kind of at the on-time mark if you need to go. And remember, everybody on this call will get a recording of this. So if you want to listen to the Q&A at the end of the call, you'll be able to do that with the recording. So back to you, Joe.
Thank you, Amy, very much. And you passed your test. So let's talk about ways that how your nonprofit can get more value out of your digital communications and who's on your social media team. Now, I want you to think about that for a second. Do you have brand ambassadors in your clients, in your volunteers, in your board members, or in your staff? And have you thought about ways that you can encourage and support brand ambassadors? Your board, staff, are you providing them with training, graphics, notifications, or calls to action to support your campaigns? There are a lot of ways to redefine your team so that if you are a team of one or two, you can bring those ambassadors on board to get more value out of your social media campaigns and your efforts. That's just something I want you to think about. We don't have time to go into a lot of detail about that, but think about it. How can you leverage those ambassadors? So, one of the key tactics for setting goals and understanding what audiences value and measuring your social results is social listening. So for most organizations, our supporters, our ambassadors, our volunteers, and our clients are talking about the issues that surround our organization's work. Now, is leadership listening to that? Are you listening to that? Social listening is a fairly new tactic for nonprofits, and we know that social media listening is a process of monitoring digital media to understand what stakeholders are saying about your organization and the issues you address, the events that you participate in, your competition. So social media listening goes, again, beyond monitoring and responding. It's about gaining valuable insights from online conversations that inform your overall communication strategy. So we're listening to things like mentions. You can create some alerts with some of the tools that are out there, and we'll talk about tools in a minute. If somebody mentions you, what are they saying? You can look at trending topics, following trending topics, follow hashtags. You may want to follow a location. So if you are a community organization that's serving a certain geographic area, you can follow a location. You're looking at industry terms and key issues as well. So the focus of your listening depends on your nonprofit goals for social media. If leadership sees the organization as a thought leader or wants the organization's reputation to grow as a go-to source, well, then you need to provide the latest information on that particular issue, and you'll need to be monitoring the issue on social media. The value of social listening is in the way that it offers your organization opportunities to respond in real time to inform your organization's content and communication strategy and engage in your audience with your audiences. Now, if you are listening and people say they love your latest event, you can thank them for their support publicly. It's a win-win. Now, if you receive an alert about a recent, maybe a recent report, some research on an issue that really impacts your community or your audiences or your programs or other stakeholders, you can create a quick blog post, link to that research on the blog post, but also put it on your different platforms. And that way you're building your audience, you're building trust with stakeholders. You become the go-to organization, but planning that out ahead of time is really important so that you have that content calendar and you're building your content around it. So if someone's talking about a term that relates to an issue where you already have a call to action, send them a message, send them an email with that call to action. Again, being prepared so you have those links in place. If you're asking them to sign a petition or download a report or register for a webinar, join a community, if they're talking about something where your interests align, have that information ready and be responsive. So have a list of things that you want people to take action on, create links specifically for those actions, and track them. Track how many people you get to the website, how many people you get to sign the petition through a certain social media platform. Show the value of engaging the right people at the right time in the right place with the right information. How does social listening help your organization meet its goals? There are a lot of tools to help you do that. And again, we're going to be talking about tools in just a little bit. There are a lot, what we're going to talk about now, there are a lot of free and low-cost tools for nonprofits. So Bitly is one of those tools that can track, you can create links, you can make those links so that they are specific to a topic, they are specific to your organization, you can track those, you can make them specific to a platform, and you can track how people are coming to your website. What type of tools are they using? Are they using a phone or a computer? It can give you so much information. So using a tool like Bitly, which is, they do have a free and a paid for versions for nonprofits, it can give you a lot of information and help you with that social listening. Canva is a tool for graphics, Google Ads, we've heard a lot about that. Don't miss that opportunity to use Google Ads for your nonprofit. The Facebook donate button, easy to put on your Facebook page. Make sure that you're using that tool. Feedly is another great tool for listening. It can send you emails and alerts. It can go out there and listen to whatever's happening on any platform, whether it's on the internet or on any of your social media tools. Wonderful tool. Hootsuite and Buffer are both tools to manage your content calendar, to schedule some of your content ahead of time. The same with Social Sprout. They give you a lot of monitoring tools and data and great graphics. For those people that love graphics, they give you a lot of information so that you can make better choices. So again, there are a ton of tools out there. And if there are any tools that you use, feel free to share those in the chat. What do you love to use? Why do you love to use it? And is it something that's free or they have a lower cost for nonprofits? We'd love for you to share those with us. So investing in an expert gets you a better return on investment. No matter what you're doing, usually an expert's going to help you. So an expert You're going to, as an expert, you're going to start with your research and analysis. You're not just going to start sending out tweets. You want to, again, do that social listening, research the background. Social media effectiveness isn't measured by how many tweets you send. It is really about that value you provide, value to the organization to meet its mission, and of course to your audiences and stakeholders to meet their needs. So make sure that you're following best practices, editorial best practices, your calendars, well-planned content, repurposing, create a vision and a purpose for your social media, and be able to communicate that with leadership. Now, one way to think about effective nonprofit social media is to keep calm. That's being collaborative, agile, logical, and methodical. Social media should be a collaborative effort. Again, back to who's on your team. Who are your ambassadors? Can you engage clients or volunteers, staff, partners, board members, and others to support your nonprofit social media campaigns? Are there other people capable of monitoring and responding to social media so that one person that's responsible right now can have a break, but you can still be responsive? Social listening allows you to be responsive. Are people in your organization able to understand the value of being agile? Again, back to that big news story. Can you get a blog post out, or does it take you weeks to address that issue? Look at how you're responding. Logical. Do you have a strategy and a voice for your online presence? Do you have a response method if a topic's being debated? How do you handle that? Are you methodical? Do you create your content and your strategy in your calendar? Do you post regularly? Do you listen often? Create alerts when a response is needed. You want to talk with leadership about your organization's social media capacity, your weaknesses and your strengths, and how to address those weaknesses and leverage your organization's strengths. So when we talk about social media capacity, what do we mean? We're looking at your expertise, resources, strategy, your effectiveness. Again, back to that measurement. How effective have you been in the past, and what are the things you can do to be more effective? Do you have quality communications? And what can you do to improve the quality? Are you efficient? What results are you seeing, and what results could you get? So one of the nonprofits' greatest, all of our nonprofits' greatest strengths is our stories. I love nonprofit stories. I'm sure you do too. And make sure that you're sharing your story. Share your impact. Balance your social media content with calls to action, sharing data on issues, share partner and funder posts, but most importantly, include your stories. People want to hear about your impact. They want to learn something new about your mission, your clients, the challenges your organization seeks to solve, and they want to feel like they can make a difference by joining forces with you, that your cause, your work makes a difference. And that's true for our donors, our volunteers, our social media ambassadors, our grant makers, our policy makers. So programs like Rebuild Together, this is a video from Rebuild Together, they share their client and their volunteer stories across platforms. Now, some of their videos are professionally recorded. Others are simply a shaky cell phone as a staff member follows a gaggle of children through the excited discovery of their new home. I love how they share their stories. It's a great way to show their impact. Now, this is a post on Twitter, and as you can see, they've done a great job. It's a great post. It talks about the funding amount, the source of funding. They thank their funder. It tells a clear story about the impact that the funder's investment will make. But one thing I want to add here, hopefully, they also have a donate button or other information on this channel, which is Twitter here. So notice there are no links for more information about the funded project or a press release about the grant or a link even to the funder to get the audiences to their website or the funder's website. I think that that's a missed opportunity. So make sure you're creating links in your profiles. So by far, this is my favorite story in 2018. I know we're not, too far in, but I think it's going to remain on, and I want to share this with you about the impact of social media. So on March 7th, Charlie Hennessy, aka Charlie Binbags, he's a homeless man in the UK. He received a donated phone. He connected to free Wi-Fi and charging at a local coffee shop. He said, "Hello, Twitter." on March 7th. He shared a situation that he was homeless and cold, and then he shared a very clear and simple statement that made him human and made us care. If you met me under better circumstances, you'd like me. I'm a nice guy. I just don't currently have a home. And out of 328 million monthly active users on Twitter, one homeless man on a donated phone with free Wi-Fi made a statement. And what happens next makes me believe in humankind and the power of social media. In 10 days, Charlie had 20,000 followers, hundreds of job offers, and love and kindness. But his story doesn't stop there. Charlie is kind. And as he continues to share his story, he's using his newfound social clout to help others. A local food bank saw an immediate surge in donations because Charlie shared their link. They had a link, they had a call to action, and Charlie shared it. A new crowdfunding program for donated mobile phones for the homeless is raising funds. And the list goes on and on. Charlie gives updates about his life and his new job while giving back by sharing stories of others who are homeless, who need a hand up, not a handout, as he says, and the nonprofit programs that serve the homeless. I love how one donated phone, one new Twitter account can change so many lives. So if Charlie can do that, think of what we can do. So I want to look at how you can get social for funding. 7.2% of nonprofit fundraising came from online giving. 17% of the online transactions were made on mobile devices, and 92% of non-government agencies use Facebook, and 35% pay for social advertising. So how does your organization stack up? Do you even know how your organization stacks up? Are you measuring these things? Is your organization measuring that type of data? Data informs leadership on their investments. Some of the free tools that I mentioned before, and were probably shared in the chat here by your peers, provide that kind of data, that type of data about devices used and so much more. So getting better data on giving campaigns, donor programs, grantor engagement informs leadership and their budgets. So one nonprofit that is really effective about using social media, integrating it, is the World Wildlife Foundation. I want you to take a look at their site sometime. It's responsive, they have take actions, they have make a monthly donation, they have all sorts of things to engage different types of people. They have, become a panda ambassador. Now I want to go down this rabbit hole and become a panda. I mean, who doesn't want to become a panda ambassador? I loved it. I love also they have, find your inner animal. They have found creative ways to get people to engage on social media and on their website. If you need some creative juices flowing and you need some inspiration, definitely recommend going to their website. And I do want to talk about Giving Tuesday. If we're talking about nonprofits and social media, we can't miss this. Giving Tuesday is the Tuesday following Thanksgiving, and most of you know that. But what I want to say is, don't just wait till November or October to get involved. Start now. Start now. Leverage the Giving Tuesday in your overarching effort on that calendar. Now, many nonprofits launch a separate and isolated Giving Tuesday campaign. That might work for some, but promote your reoccurring giving campaign. It can lead to growth. And just know that you can sign up now on Giving Tuesday. And when people go and look at Giving Tuesday or they look at other websites, it says, here's your local area. Here are the nonprofits in your local area. It is, don't just think of it as a once a year thing. There's a focus on it once a year, but make sure that you're signed up, that you are registered, and that you're looking at how can you include your annual giving, your regular giving in Giving Tuesday. So one of the things I also recommend is that people participate in some of the bigger social media campaigns. So this week is National Public Health Week, and each year my clients and their communities participate in this week-long awareness campaign. They have a Twitter chat. They do a great job. So one of the things that I suggest doing is to participate in the campaign, and right after the campaign is over, have my small nonprofits contact the social media gurus at the it's the National Public Health Week. They have a separate group that does that, but it's the Association for Public Health, the American Public Health Association. contact them and ask them what worked for them, what didn't work for them, what feedback do they have. We got a ton of templates for them for all sorts of campaigns. They love it. We participated, we supported them. They in turn were very happy to share their experiences and their suggestions to us. Wonderful way to, again, get experience and to work with folks that are doing it right. I also want to mention, you want to look at GuideStar. If you're working on grants, GuideStar is important. Is your organization on GuideStar? That's a trick question. It is on GuideStar. Whether you've done anything or not, go check your GuideStar profile now. They have done a ton of updates at the end of 2017, and your GuideStar profile is used by Amazon Smile, Facebook's for Nonprofits, Google Ads, Classy. Everything you have on there, including your social media, username, profiles, etc., are used on that tool. So again, you can see here they're asking for your social media username. Amazon Smile is so popular. You want to make sure that all of your information is updated and you have the latest information on GuideStar. You can see here, this is a nonprofit organization, the Minnesota Council of Nonprofits. They are a grantor and a grantee. They do have the Platinum certification for transparency on GuideStar. And you can see here, GuideStar also has all of their social media links, and they have their Donate Now button. Great example of how to use those tools and make sure that your social media is connected to those databases. Same is true for the Foundation Directory online. If you don't know about that, that is a directory of databases that has about 140,000 grant makers and now includes government grant makers. You get a lot of information. Here we have the Ford Foundation, and you can see they have a LinkedIn page. You can also see that they ask on this database for the communication, social media, and publications. The Ford Foundation, you click on their link to Twitter, and you can see that, to Facebook, you can see they are on Facebook. There's a grant maker on Facebook, and they have all of their social media connected to Facebook. Ford Foundation is doing a great job of leveraging their social media and cross platforms with Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc. And here's their Twitter account. And you can see that they have an excellent Twitter account. They are giving a lot of information. They participate in things like Tech Tuesday and other elements. They have a great following and provide you with a lot of fun, fantastic links. Again, back to the database, they have LinkedIn profiles. On the Foundation directory, you can connect with everyone, and that's what I was saying. Does leadership need to be connecting to folks? Do you have grant professionals that need to be connecting to their program officers? You have all this information in this database. They can connect with them on LinkedIn, build those relationships. We're doing in-person and online relationships. They're announcing funding on Twitter. So check out whoever you're getting funding from, connect with them on social media. We have groups like grants.gov that are providing lots of resources on Twitter to small organizations making announcements about their funding. We do have a resource. I do run Grant Chat every Tuesday at noon. We talk about a lot of these things. In fact, grants.gov will be on our Grant Chat on May 1st. So use that tool. So measuring value, listen for the right content at the right time, use the tools for consistency and measurement, connect throughout the organization, update your profiles everywhere, help leadership lead and manage, engage, tell your story, and participate.
Thanks so much, Joe. That was fantastic. What an amazing amount of info. We've got about 5 minutes left in our webinar, and this is just a quick reminder of Head, Heart, and Hands. That once you take all of this amazing information, compile it and have it in front of you so you're ready to talk about it and you're ready to move forward and speak with your leadership team. Just remember we have all three of those components pulled together. So with our remaining 5 minutes, Joe, would you be so kind as to just advance the slide and don't pass it back to me, since that was where we went a little sideways with our technology earlier, because we really just now want to respond to some of your questions. And for those of you that do have to take off before our last 4 minutes, I just wanted to again publicly thank Joe Miller for all of her fantastic work on this project and her commitment to teaching our certification class on May 7th. If anyone has questions on that, you can certainly contact me either on Twitter at Amy Jauman, for those of you that were logged in earlier, or you can email me at ajauman@nismonline.org, and I'll throw that email in the chat as well. Oh, look at that. Joe's even pointing to our handles down in the corner. So thank you again, Joe, for a fantastic presentation. So one of the questions that did come up was if you have had any experience or kind of witnessed anyone who did an excellent job training their ambassadors. So have you seen like a program that maybe people either that you could tell us about or that people could maybe go and kind of investigate to see how those ambassadors, so not necessarily employees, but those individuals out there can be educated to share the message on social media?
Sure. You know, the one that comes to mind right now is the thing that's going on right now with that National Public Health Week. Go to the National Public Health Week. They have their own Twitter account. They also have resources there. They have done a phenomenal job. They built their website around National Public Health Week. They have all sorts of graphics and training and how-tos and how to use Twitter and what to put on Twitter. They have done a phenomenal job of training their ambassadors and getting people to engage. So I think that that's the first thing that comes to mind. I've seen a lot of them out there. And for some reason, I can't think of anyone else right now. Again, that one's fresh, but I think that one's a
good place to start.
Yeah, very good place to start. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the one thing that I learned from looking at different ambassador programs that I would share is a lot of times people use an ambassador program as a way for their ambassadors to familiarize themselves with a new platform. So it can kind of be a perk, so, hey, we'll train you how to use Twitter. But it's really important to remember that if they are learning a platform while they are sharing your message, it means they probably don't have much of an audience. So I think that's an awesome takeaway, and I always encourage that. But I also encourage them to send messages out on the platforms that they're already active on. So yes, put that training out as a way for your ambassadors to learn a new platform, but also encourage them to go where they've already built an audience. Kind of an important component that can be easy to forget. So I just want to be respectful of everybody's time and let you know that it is 3 o'clock. I've got 2 more questions here for Joe, so we're going to stay on the line, but if you have to go, just a reminder, you will get this recording via email, and you can catch up on these last couple of questions then. Thanks for attending if you do have to log off. So Joe, another question for you is helping leadership be less scared of investing in social media. So this question came up when we were talking and kind of thinking around the idea of, yes, we all accept that social media is here to stay. Yes, we know that we have to have these kind of tough conversations. Yes, we have to kind of get over we have to jump in. What can we do? Like, is there anything tactically that you can think of that is really helpful?
That is helpful to get them past the fear?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. It's data. It really is. Again, twofold. Well, it's really threefold. It's back to that head, heart, hands. Giving them the data about how people are coming to the organization. If you want to reach out to communities and audiences and grant makers and donors and funders, look at where they are. If you aren't where they are, somebody else is. And so part of it is that competitive piece that, people are out there to give, and they want to give to whoever's easiest to give to, who aligns with them. If they can't find you, if you aren't where they're at, they're not going to give to you. They're going to give to somebody else that also may serve the same community. So you want to make sure that leadership understands how people are giving and the changes that are happening with giving, or the way grantors are beginning to engage with grantees or require social media, showing how that's part of the way we do business now, not just how we tell our story or communicate, which we can do in many different ways. But if we don't keep up and we don't put that element in our strategic plan or in our communication goals, we're losing out. We're losing communications. We're losing donors. We're losing opportunities to tell our story and to engage volunteers and other audiences. So again, being able to measure that, helps them get over that fear. The other part of it is that there are tools to manage a lot of different things out there. So if you have a tool like Buffer or like Hootsuite or Social Sprout, where you can have a team working on social media and you can get that content out early, they can monitor that. What content are you putting out there? Does it have our voice? How are we engaging? Having that plan makes them feel like they're more in control rather than just somebody hitting a button. Data, planning helps them to get over that fear.
Fantastic. I would echo as well that managing their expectations is important as well. And I think that part of this comes from fear, right? Is that they think they're going to put out a campaign and then the next day they're going to have $1 million. And I say that somewhat kidding, but there is a little bit of that feeling, right? Because social media is so instant and it seems magical. And a lot of times the best way that you can get buy-in is by talking to them about the journey and about the fact that we're looking, this is a big part actually of our prep course. We talk about how do you educate people on here's what we're going to be at 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. Here's what we can expect. I'm monitoring this all the time because we might want to make adjustments and changes, but don't think and don't assume that they don't think this, right? Don't think that tomorrow this is going to all pay off beautifully. That would just be too easy, wouldn't it? So. I think the only other question we had out there was kind of some of those tools, if we could put their names in the chat. So I put Buffer, Hootsuite, Sprout Social in there. You mentioned Bitly. I will add that. What were some of those other tools that you had mentioned? Feedly, Jen shared, thank you. Canva. All right, we've got another question in the chat. You mentioned Hootsuite as an example of a resource to help plan out content calendar. Are there other resources for a nonprofit that used to be small and is growing and needs to plan ahead? So Hootsuite is a social media management system. So that was the first message that I put out were examples of other ones. Buffer is actually the one that I use. Sprout Social is another excellent tool. And in these, if you're not familiar with the social media management tool, and please, whoever chatted that in, I'm not sure if I answered your question. Oh, Sophia, who I know. Hello, Sophia. I'm not sure if I answered your question. But the tools like Buffer, I can speak the most about. They not only do they allow you to schedule your content, they have amazing analytics that can let you kind of look at the content that you're sharing and who's engaging with you, what's doing well, in a completely different way that I personally find very valuable, as well as allowing you to repurpose content, again, with ease. Okay. All right. We've got Meet Edgar. So we've got some good tools coming up in the chat here. Thanks, Jen. Pretty sure that is our own Jennifer Radke, CEO of NXM. Yeah, that's chatting that in. Great.
Yeah, Meet Edgar is great too.
So I don't think we've got any other questions in the chat. So we still got quite a few people hanging out with us. We appreciate you hanging on for the last few questions. Again, you'll get this recording in a follow-up email. You are always welcome to email me at ajauman@nismonline.org or Joe. Their email is on the screen there as well. And we're happy to answer questions for you. You'll also get information about the upcoming prep course with the reduced cost, a letter that kind of helps you outline if you do need to get reimbursement. We've written a letter for you that you can share with your employer, and hopefully you can come back to this video and listen if there was anything that you missed, or if you just missed hearing my voice and Joe's voice, and you want to listen again. So thank you again. Another shout out to Joe for all of her tremendous work on this and on our upcoming prep course for nonprofits coming up May 7th. Thank you so much for all of your work. And we look forward to staying connected with everybody in the nonprofit social media community. Have a great afternoon, everyone.